I said a hip hop, the hippie, hip hop, and you don't stop the rocket to the bang bang.
Boogie, sit up, jump the boogie
to the rhythm of the boogie to beat. Yo.
Yeah, we went real old school on that.
Yo, it's Hip Hop History Month. You know what I'm saying?
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Word up.
We gotta honor that Hip Hop History Month.
Come on, man, we gotta honor that. Listen, man, we gotta honor ourselves. You know what I'm saying?
True. No doubt. Who came up with Hip Hop History Month? Did we do that?
Yeah, we did that. We did that. Right. That's right.
It's not the shortest month of the year, so I'm down with that. That's all good.
Yeah.
Man, even in that, man, y'all better leave Dr. Carter Woodson alone on that shortest month of the year, bro. I ain't hearing that. That's my fat brother too, man. I ain't hearing that.
And if folks don't realize, we're doing our intro, and we have a special guest host tonight, my Minister.
Minister Server, I'm here to be of service any way I can for the people.
True.
And we got
Kamau K. Franklin in the house as always, you know what I'm saying? Brooklyn.
Yeah. Ain't been to Brooklyn forever.
And we got your band. The ear doctor in the building.
Ear doctor.
And we got my peoples over here. Jai's in the building too.
Ja.
Word
now,
up.
if y'all haven't noticed, like our man Kalonji, Changa is not here tonight. Like the news is that his mom's had to work a late shift, so she couldn't get the laundry done. So he didn't have anything to wear, so he couldn't make it out the house. Otherwise, he would have been
ran out of Renegade culture t-shirts. You know how it is. You know how I go, man. But I got you, Kalonji. Don't worry about it. I got you.
Next week, couple of weeks, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying?
Word up. I got you.
So we got a real exciting show today.
Yeah, definitely.
So if folks know, we're in the midst of this election cycle. Some big things are happening. And even though it's post-election, we're not quite sure who has won.
Election selection.
You
know what it is.
And for those who are not that bright, we talk about the presidential election. But we got some really, really important, great guests on.
No doubt.
Black folks who grassroots work, organizing, civic
heavyweights,
man.
No doubt.
So let me actually, let's just start off with introducing, I guess, even though they're not going to come back until the first segment. But we got Brother Jared Ball, who's a regular, he's almost like a co-host.
Yeah, man, Jared's the man, for sure.
I know, I feel like it's like Saturday Night Live.
I don't even know how y'all happen to get Jared on here as much as y'all do. He must really like y'all, man.
He likes
me. He likes Saul, he likes you.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I see what it is.
We be talking like, Kalonji and shit.
I'm saying, he's on a whole nother level, so for him being in the show.
You know what I'm saying? That's, you know what I'm saying? I know he's bringing out the real, because he's stepping up his game, too. He's not like grassroots. He got like a book out and shit.
Man,
I didn't know Jared could really write. I thought it was like a fake shit.
He like running with the Renegades,
Yeah, I know. He's down with that.
No doubt.
So quickly with his intro, Jared is a father, a husband, graduate he's a professor at Morgan State University, professor in communications. New book that came out, Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power, and you can catch this shit on mixwithouglife.org. We also have another guest, first time on, but this brother is popular anywhere he goes. This brother Diallo Kenyatta, I'm so glad that we got him on as a guest. He's a Pan-Africanist based in Chicago. He's been active in the Black empowerment and liberation movement for over 20 years, starting in high school. I mean, he brought us a bio that talked about his high school shit, so that's how long he's been doing it. Damn. Where he did the Stop the Violence Coalition and the Black Brothers Program. And today he continues doing his work, starting cooperative businesses, engaging in urban organic agriculture, building links between the African diaspora and liberation struggles in Africa. You can tell I'm excited because I'm rushing through this shit because I want to get to the show.
I was saying, you ain't even waiting for them to get on the screen.
Nah, let's get this going. So when we get on, we can just talk about all the stuff we got to talk about.
I like it. That's right.
And our third guest and most important guest tonight.
We have Zakiya Sankara-Jabar. She is the National Director of Activism at Bright Beam, the parent organization of Education Post. She is the co-founder of Racial Justice Now, and most recently served as the national field organizer at Dignity Schools campaign. Zakiya has been named the inaugural Power 50 Leadership Fellowship for Women of Color, with Community Change and Community Activism Fellowship with the Wayfinder Foundation. Zakiya is a preeminent thought leader in racial education, justice, and has received numerous awards. Now, in her free time, she enjoys traveling and spending time with her husband and her 2 children. That's the real right there. That last line, that's the most important thing.
Hey.
The family, you know what I'm saying?
Hey, I'm
heavyweights, y'all.
I'm so proud of y'all, man. Reading is fundamental. Y'all passed the real program, and y'all really got it.
That's why we didn't have you read it. You see what I'm saying?
You right about that.
So we're going to be rocking and rolling. We're going to come back with our guests and get get started. Oh, we got special musical guests tonight.
One of my all-time favorites. People that know me know this guy. I love him. He's a phenomenal artist. King Malachi gonna be in the building tonight, and he's in the building tonight, y'all. Believe that.
So we're gonna come back. We'll come back again with this special post-election wrap-up show about what's gonna be going on. We're gonna right back with you with Renegade Culture. Bam.
Boom, boom, boom.
Why you keep calling me? Why you keep calling me? You don't have what I need. You don't have what I need. Why you keep calling me? Why you keep calling me? You don't have what I need. You don't have what I need. You don't have what I need. You don't have. Why you keep calling me?
Clap your hands, everybody. You got what it takes. Because I'm Server here, and this is Kamau, and these are the Braves.
Renegades.
Yeah, we got
Renegade. Y'all wasn't ready for that. Y'all was not ready for that.
I was like, God
Word
damn.
up.
So we back. We ready for our shit?
Yeah,
you know
man.
What I'm saying? Let me just set the stage really quickly. At the time of this taping, we don't know which plutocrat has won the presidency.
Exactly.
We do know it's a tight race, but it looks like Biden will probably win it unless there's some major changes. I think Arizona, Nevada, or
Pennsylvania.
But Pennsylvania he's behind. Nevada and Arizona he is leading, and if he captures those two states. And Michigan has been in his
either one.
Either
one.
No, he needs both of those, and he's in the lead in both of those. And then they will have 270.
Okay.
And Georgia is a little bit close, and it looks like he can flip a little bit, which give him a little bit more. But if things stay as they are, it could be that Biden will be the next selected president of the United States.
Number 46 selector.
That's right. And so now we're talking about, and Trump is talking a lot of trash now. About stolen ballots.
Hold up, Trump is talking trash?
Who knew? Who knew?
What?
Who knew?
That's shocking.
So I'm curious about, some of this is like the theatrics of it, but I'm just curious about it because this is very theatrical time. And so, Zakiya, I'm going to start with you because I want to know what you think. Let's say this pattern still holds and Trump loses. What do you think is going to be Trump's game plan? Do you think there's going to be lots of lawsuits, buffer? Do you expect him to try to hold on and be dragged out kicking and screaming? What do you think is going to be happening?
Well, first of all, peace and blessings, brother. Thanks for the invitation to come on. Happy to be here with an esteemed panel and certainly with you all as guests. So I think that, if in his mind he loses fair and square, I think he'll leave. If he, again, in his mind, suspects that there are issues which he's indicated all day in his all-cap press release and then the press conference he just had a little bit over an hour ago, I think. He is indicating that some nefarious things are happening in certain states. So if the latter is the case, I do believe that he will put up a fight various ways. We saw yesterday where his people came down to Detroit demanding that the votes stop being counted. There's videos out there about that. I believe it happened in a couple of other states. I just saw the one in Detroit. So clearly he's riling up his base. I've also seen some concerning things on social media from Trump groups, like Facebook groups. They have been posting, threats and all manner of craziness. So I'm of the belief that we're not to underestimate what may happen. And maybe that's just me, the mother in me, just being cautious and thinking about my family. I live here near the White House. I live in suburban DC. So, I wouldn't say I'm walking around with fear, but I think what I would say, with this individual for the last 4 years, I'm not thinking he has any decency. I don't think he has, he clearly has no, filter, as they say. He literally doesn't give a damn. And so when you're dealing with somebody like that, I think you need to be prepared for anything. That's my perspective.
So, and the media predicted, the pundits and everybody, that Joe Biden was going to run away with this, right? The almost same thing we had 4 years ago.
Even worse, actually, man. Because they had him up like landslide almost. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it was supposed to be an easy alley-oop for this dude. And then all of a sudden we come in and it's like all this nail biter. So it's almost like people just don't expect white folks to support white supremacy, or they just don't want to admit that's
what it is more than anything else. That denial.
Yeah, I feel it's like denial. So I went to Jared and then Diallo. So what do you think we can make of that in terms of like all this angst around this dude being like, this the soul of America, was going to reclaim the White House and all this bad white supremacist stuff is going to go away. And as we saw, that's just not the case. Jared, why don't you take the lead and then Diallo, you follow up.
So again, I just want to say, echo Sister Zakiya's opening comments and say that I appreciate being in part of this panel, and we need more of these conversations. The more, the better. And then I've been engaging in my version of political theater. So I'm just saying, to me, it really doesn't matter. It's the same message for us.
Exactly.
Regardless. Anyway, so I'll start with that. But what I see happening is so first of all, Trump is playing up, and he laid the groundwork from a long way out, because I think he knew what was going to happen
months ago, right?
Yeah. So when he sees the numbers changing against his favor, that's just because he told his people to not do mail-in and come out and vote, and the Democrats stayed home and did mail-in. So as they get counted, it seems like there's some nefarious, slick game being run against him. But the reality is just Democratic Party votes are coming in later than the Republican votes, so it just looks like in some cases. But as other people have pointed out, if the Democrats were trying to run some hustle like that, then why aren't they doing better with all these other races throughout the election? And why didn't they just rig the game to do better than that? But the reality of the situation, for me at least, is that the real hustle is, number one, in the idea that this election again can bring about the kind of change that most people think that they, or at least know that they want, and that to try to reaffirm the myth that Trump is somehow some truly different, anomalous figure, which I've never really believed. So this idea that if Biden wins, we're, quote, back on track. And I think to the point that Kamau, you and Mr. Server were bringing up, is that it's on the one hand, Trump is getting more votes than anybody expected, and white supremacy is coming out in full strength. But it's also represented in the so-called opposition party as well, where Biden has made clear, and so has Kamala, made clear as the top cop. And the one who wants to lock up Black and brown parents if their kids don't go to school. This is a white supremacist victory either way, and a capitalist victory either way. So anyway, I just see. So the last point I just wanted to bring up is that Trump, what I think he's going to do is use the groundwork he laid to set his exit, making this claim of some kind of game being run against him, some sort of theft of his rightful election or victory. But he's going to use that to just transition it to the media company he's already been laying down with his son-in-law and preparing. He's going to use that to launch some new business venture. And of course, he's still going to be around. I mean, other people pointed this out, whether he's in the White House or not, he's still going to be around, being that loud, aggressive, not so much dog whistle, but bullhorn for white supremacy and conservatism. And he's going to turn that into a whole bunch of money in a media venture that's still going to pollute the political conversation as much as he's been doing while he's been president. So again, we have to be about the same thing that we needed to be about before this election, regardless who wins. And I'm sure we can come back and talk more about that later on. But that's where I'm at least right now.
Diallo, do you see a big difference between the two, or is there a positive in getting Trump out potentially?
I think that in the U.S., we're taught to look at politicians as celebrities, but every politician is deeply embedded and obligated to the larger party structure. Even Trump, who was the renegade and went against the Republican establishment, if you look at his actual policies that he advanced and you ignore his rhetoric, he has followed lockstep with the party platform. So there is a significant difference between Biden and Trump if you look at them as what they're supposed to be, representatives of their parties and representative and leaders to bring forth a particular set of political values and a political platform. As far as Trump being the worst president ever, I think that there's a lot of political amnesia in the United States because I remember when George W. Bush, everyone said W stood for the worst. In fact, the Republicans don't win elections. They always steal elections. The last Republican president that was elected to office without election fraud was Dwight D. Eisenhower. You can't find a Republican elected to the office of president that didn't engage in fraud, whether it was Ronald Reagan manipulating the Iran hostage deal, and we know George Bush and his big brother in Florida, that's fresh in our minds. But if we go back to Nixon, and remember, they were on the verge of negotiating peace with the Vietnamese, and Nixon said, if you wait and keep the war going, if I win the election, I'll give you a sweeter deal. I'll give you weapons. I'll give you more concessions. Went behind the back and literally committed treason. So Republicans don't win elections, national elections, or even Senate elections fair and square because they simply do not represent the interest of enough people to do so. The Republicans only exist with the original intent. The only protected minority in US politics is something called the minority of the opulent, the few extremely rich, influential individuals. And that's the only truly protected minority by the state. And the reason why casual observers look at the Republicans as being so forceful and the Democrats as being so passive is because the Republicans are able to openly engage in protecting the minority of the opulent, whereas the Democrats have a facade of being the People's Party or the opposition party or a leftist liberal party, when they truly do have, in essence, the mission of protecting the minority of the opulent. But the difference emerges in methodology.
So wait, let me stop you. Let me stop you right there. I'm gonna let you continue on for a second. I just want to break in. Because I'm curious about something you said, like I don't think it's untrue that Republicans have stolen elections or done things to sort of give themselves a better shot. But are you suggesting somehow that the Republicans don't have a base of support within the white community? And I'm curious about other folks' thought on that. That
yes,
would necessarily
the Republicans
win them most of these elections anyway, particularly when those white folks see themselves in an antagonistic position vis-a-vis black folks, right?
Yes, the Republicans have a base of support in the white community, and that's all they have. And it's inadequate. It has been inadequate to win elections since the post-World War II. Prior to World War II, having a large white voter base was more than enough to win elections in a democratic system. But since going back to Reconstruction era, we're literally, this election is the 100-year anniversary of women's suffrage, and then expansion of the vote to other previously out groups and civil rights legislation. Now, the Republicans got mostly rural and a large significant number of white people, but the Democrats have a little less than 50% of whites, upwards of 90% of blacks, depending on the election cycle, 70 to 80% of Hispanics. They have a large number of Jewish, have a large number of Asian, Hmong, East Indian, West Indian, so that they have a more diverse, or what they call themselves, the Democrats call themselves the big tent party. So yes, if it was just, if you left the election strictly to white folks, the Republicans would have a majority.
So let me stop you. I want to bring some of the other guests back in to sort of mull on that, and in some ways too, does it make, how big of a difference does it make folks? And I think, Jared, you were alluding to this, between having this party, which may have a more multiracial base to it, and a party that's all white.
Multiracial front to it. You know what I'm saying? Because again, it tries to put that persona on, but when it comes down to it, it's the same thing. It's like Malcolm talked about the fox versus the wolf. It's the same process. But go ahead.
I have to.
Let me stop you. I'm going to bring the other guest in. I'm going to get back to you. Jared, Zakiya, you guys have any comments on that?
Yeah, I definitely disagree a little bit with that analysis. And again, this is just based on my own lived experience in doing policy work. I think we underestimate the amount of conservatism in a lot of other communities of color. It's not just white people that identify with Republican values, period. And certainly we see even in this election, which is strange, you know, Jared pointed this out, it's strange that, you know, Republicans actually increased their support in the House and then did not lose any state legislature. Right. And so when you think about that, and when you look at least some of the early data, now we know that the data can potentially, you know, change, but when you look at some of the early data, Trump actually increased his support among Black people, doubled his support among Black women.
Yeah.
When we look at his support among the Latino community, I saw some interesting data out of Texas, some border counties. I mean, we cannot underestimate the socialization of white supremacy in people of color as well. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, you know, there are some things that people identify with in Trumpism. I think that's what we need to be talking about instead of pathologizing people. I mean, there's a lot of, when I looked at Asians, even Asians are conservative. I'm confused. Now, I know that no community is monolithic, but when you think about the Chinese and you think about some of the Japanese, the moneyed Asians, they're very conservative and anti-Black in many ways as well. So maybe not, you know, some of the other, you know, more oppressed Asian communities, but I just don't think we need to be underestimating the level of conservatism, not necessarily Trumpism, but there's a lot of things that people, especially when you think about faith, when you think about guns. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was raised in the South in Alabama, and I know my family is very much so pro Second Amendment. That doesn't mean they vote Republican, but if it came down to it, they will fight for that right. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I just see things differently. And also based on my own work in the state of Ohio, there's a lot of conservative Black people, especially in churches. I'll give you a prime example. And this is when Bush ran in 2004 in the state of Ohio. There was a constitutional amendment on the ballot in Ohio to define marriage as between a man and a woman. That constitutional ballot passed because of Black people. Mm-hmm. And Black people voted in high numbers. Like they voted for Kerry for president, but for that ballot initiative, it was a way over 50%.
Wow.
So we're going to take our first break here, and when we come back, we're going to pick up on the conversation. Jared, I see you itching a little bit, so when we come back, we're going to start off with you. Renegade Culture, we're going to be right back.
Yes, sir. Boom. Like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. Renegade Culture. Renegade Culture. We had to get that in for you. I did that just for you, brother. Just for you, yo.
I appreciate that.
Renegade Culture.
You know what I'm saying? Yo, we back on the air with our guests, Sister Zakiya, Brother Diallo, Brother Jared. We want to thank them for coming on. We're talking about the post-election.
Dr. Jared.
Dr. Jared.
Come on, man. Come on, man. Give him his props.
True that?
Dr. Jared.
True.
Come on now.
Oh.
Come on now.
Okay, ear doctor. Yeah, well, you know.
The ear doctor. Who's the ear doctor? Oh, the ear doctor. Okay.
I won't be all bougie about it.
That's like Dr. Dre.
Dr. Dre. You know
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
We get it. But Jared, yeah, man. So we want to come back to you to kind of pick up on the point that we were just talking about from the comment that Diallo made. Then we'll go on to the next one. I know you were kind of itching.
Well, there's just a lot. There's a lot to try to get in there, but first of all, I appreciate recognition of my degree. If for no other reason, I'm still paying for it. So, you know, it's and I'm probably going to be forever. So might as well. But so there's a lot of things going on here. First, I always want to try to point out that there's the grand hustle here is the suggestion that any of these processes can lead to the kind of change that we want. So all of this emphasis on the vote. The one thing that Chomsky has said that I agree with on these elections, because he keeps coming back to vote for all these Democrats, is that these are quadrennial extravaganzas. These are spectacle. These are shows. These are theater. This is why Trump has done so well. The WWE, Hall of Fame member, the talk show host. I mean, this is why he's doing so well. But part of the problem that I see, and I think in general, I think Diallo is correct that the two parties have tried to at least establish themselves on this basis. Certainly since the Fannie Lou Hamer moment, where the Dixiecrats went to the Republican parties and everybody sort of switched spots. But the Republicans have tried to maintain themselves by basically being the party of overt white nationalism, and the Democrats have tried to be the Fox-like party that has tried to build, as Diallo said, the big tent to bring in more "quote unquote" diverse people, diversity to keep up with the numbers. That is the broad game they've tried to play, but within that, there's a lot of other things happening. So I keep wanting to go back to that 2014 Princeton University study that looked at 25 plus years of elections and of policy in this country, rather, and showed that this country is an oligopoly, or an oligarchy rather, not a democracy, because they showed that regardless of the amount of people in this country across race that support any policy, if the elite don't support it, it doesn't pass. So and they went back 25 years, and I mean did a pretty thorough look at this. So I think I like. The other thing is that when where I disagree with a little bit, I think with what Zakiya is saying, is that the conservatism, first of all, the white supremacy is rampant within our communities, just even in the idea that we would want to support Democrats. I mean, that to me is no less a symptom of white supremacy. But the other part of it is that there has been an intentional creation. I mean, we could point to people like Karl Rove, Bush's brain, for instance, who led the way of creating, for what Zakiya talks about, those single issue platforms to reduce all of these elections to gay marriage or abortion or one of these other issues, to mess with people like that, because what everybody is up against. Okay, good. But what both parties are playing with is that and don't want to acknowledge, and it was even reported this week, even by Fox News, that 72% of the people in this country want universal health care. 80% of people want an end to war. Even Fox News viewers were saying, I think it was up to like 80% want more government involvement in healthcare and in job creation, all kinds of stuff. But those are never issues we can vote for. Those are never issues we can actually get in the game on. So everybody has to be reduced, particularly like in this cycle, to voting for the lesser of evil, if for no other reason, they're just not the other person. So everything gets reduced to this spectacle so that nobody is actually able to advocate or develop a platform and run on that and vote on that basis, which is why, I think we need to keep coming back to the development of our own, organized approach to electoral politics in ways we're not doing now. And the last point I just want to bring up very quickly is that Greg Palast has been showing as a journalist for decades now and doing great work on exposing the voter purging that goes on in this country, that the real hustle that nobody, so even before we came on here, I'm watching CNN and they're talking about how, they're all getting excited about how Biden is closing gaps or holding leads and this, that, and the third, but none of them will report the fact that hundreds of thousands, and Greg Palast has documented this, hundreds of thousands of Black people, just for instance, in Georgia alone, have been purged from the voter rolls, didn't even get the chance to vote, and would have given the election to Biden. So even where it would benefit their own candidate, they don't want to get into what they are all well aware of is the hustle of the voting rigging, the electronic voting rigging, the voter purging, all that kind of stuff. And then the last point that Greg Palast has also showed is that the Democrats, particularly in the South, support the continued purging of those Black voters because they fear the Fannie Lou Hamer Black Party emerging in the South that would take away their attempt to be that big tent. So there's all this hustle going on with these two parties, and we are caught, not even in the middle, but off on the side, and not getting anything that we are well and deserve.
So with that being said,
I just want to go on record and say we are not disagreeing.
Okay.
I was only pointing out, you're right. I mean, in naming Karl Rove as the architect, because he did, he really looked at the conservative pieces within the Black community and targeted our churches. It was very strategic. We can admit that. And clearly, you're absolutely right on, socialized medicine and Medicare for all, which is why I was so angry when the Democrats, as we all know, certainly did their own voter suppression tactics, as we know, in 2016 and 2020 against Bernie Sanders.
Right.
So let's talk about that.
Right. But now, also now, one thing that we talked about, we saw an uptick of black people that were voting Republican. Diallo, why do you think that? What kind of caused that phenomenon? Do you think that the rappers played any part about it, or just people just frustrated? What do you think that is?
Every cycle, George Bush in his second drive to take the White House, he got more black votes in the first cycle than the second one. That's the power of incumbency. So an incumbents have a natural, that's why a lot of people push for term limits. But when you go from 3% to 6% and you say you doubled your vote, that is a manipulation of the weight and significance of the increase in voting. So the Republicans' black support is for such a racially diverse community that has diverse, it is obscene, and getting 17% of black male votes and 3 to 5% of black female votes is nothing to celebrate or for us to be shocked about. Black people, we've always had Uncle Tom sellouts and bootlickers, and we got black Mormons, we got black Jehovah's Witnesses, overtly racist. I mean, black people, there are some black people that will follow white folks off of any clip. So I don't think it's significant enough for us to be surprised at, because that is nothing more than a political anomaly or a political fact that incumbents always get more recognition, they're more trusted in the ideas. But I also want to say that the Republicans are not a conservative party. The terms liberal and conservatives are beat to hell by the corporate press, but they're not a conservative party. And there's a big difference between social conservatism and political conservatism. There is no strand of political conservatism in the black community. There's a very strong strand of social conservatism. And black people always advance political liberalism or their political liberalism over their social. They're willing to put their social conservatism on the black burner when it comes to larger gains to be made in any political cycle.
No doubt.
So,
and I just don't like, I'm not saying championing, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I didn't vote for Biden or Trump in this election. I voted green. But saying the Democrats are no different than the Republicans is like saying Protestantism is no different than Catholicism. There are differences and if we don't comprehend the differences in dogma and approach, it makes us less effective in opposition and subverting them. So we have to acknowledge the differences if we're going to mount effective campaigns against them to subvert or manipulate them in our favor.
Yeah, so I'll go on record and say, I think what I hear when people say there's no difference, especially when it comes to the black community, anybody that's lived in a city in this country, I think know that when black people say there's no difference, there's a famous meme that goes around Facebook, the hood when a Democrat is reelected or in the hood when a Republican is elected, and it's the same picture, meaning that their material conditions have not changed. And I mean, Jared just pointed, to a report that talks about in the last 25 years, like if the elite is not with it, which is most of the time they're against anything that's going to increase the material conditions of working class people, then to me, that's not a far fetch. Of course, there are differences, but I think on a larger, more macro level, no.
I have to argue that it's just not true. If it was true, I wish it were true so we could just say that and dismiss it.
We can disagree. I just disagree.
Right.
Diallo, bring out your point.
Still, but we have material evidence to support either your position or mine. I was in Chicago. I've been in Chicago for a decade. So I've been through a Republican governor. I've been a Democratic governor, Republican governor, and back to a Democratic governor. The Republican governor, the Democratic governor instituted a moratorium on the death penalty. The Republican governor came and reversed that moratorium. And then the Democrat that got elected reinstituted that. And maybe for a lot of us, but for people with, like my father, who was tried to bring him up on capital murder. Those minute things, especially when we have a predatory police department in the Chicago PD that has torture confessions out of black people, and we have so many black people I just got a childhood friend of mine who spent 27 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit.
Does the governor control the police department?
I'm not finished. No, I didn't. I stated what the governor did. I said that the governor put a moratorium on the death penalty.
Right.
And that means something. It is not liberation. It is not, it's not repairing the blight in our community, but those type of minute changes gives us opportunity. James Baldwin says sometimes when black folks vote, they're only voting for more time. Sometimes we're not voting for a representative. Sometimes we're voting for a more vulnerable enemy, where we're trying to determine who can we best beat the hell out of. So we got to vote for we want to handpick our enemy. So I'm saying also in Missouri, or I lived in New York under Deakins and under Giuliani. And there was on the ground material differences in the behavior and the functioning of the state and the responsiveness of the state under Giuliani's mayorship versus who was a Republican, and Deakins. And no, it's not liberation. Liberation is never on the ballot, but that doesn't mean, it doesn't subvert our desire or our moves to liberation to acknowledge that there are material differences between these two oppressive parties.
So let me jump in because
I have to respond, please.
You got to respond? I'm going to let you respond.
Yes, I have to. So I think that's great. And I'm happy that, your governor in Illinois was able to make that happen in terms of the death penalty. I support that. However, we all have anecdotal stories. As I mentioned at the outset, I've been an organizer for well over 15 years now, and I've been organizing particularly around education justice. And I can tell you that in the state of Ohio, from my perspective and from the organizing and policy advocacy work that I've done, it was barriers, and this is education. So this is supposed to be a democratic, right? We're supposed to have liberals are supposed to be on our side. Black children are getting their ass kicked in schools when it comes to the school to prison pipeline, when it comes to majority white teachers, when it comes to opportunity gaps. And I was fighting for working class parents. It started with my own story when my 3-year-old son was being identified by a white teacher as a problem and expelled from a preschool. So I started organizing other poor working class Black women. I went to my Black state representative, who was a Democrat, and asked him to repeal Ohio's zero tolerance law. I asked him to institute a law that would ban pre-K through 3rd grade suspensions in the state of Ohio. His response is, do you want a cosmetic bill, or do you want this bill to actually go through? I said, we want the bill to go through. This was a learning experience for me. I had no idea what's a cosmetic bill. I didn't even know they played those kind of games. And I said, well, what are you talking about? He did not introduce the bill. Why? Because the teachers' unions donate money to the Democratic Party. The unions are not always on our side.
That's right.
And there's too much evidence to the contrary. It was a Republican state lawmaker who took up our issue. They also had the power to move it because they have the power of the Ohio legislature and the Ohio governorship. And I'm wrapping up, but I have to finish the story. It took us 3.5 years to get this done with a Republican lawmaker, but we were able to get it done. And now John Kasich is speaking at the DNC. He was the governor that signed our bill in 2018. So we got all these anecdotal evidence, but it's not true. I agree still on the macro level, but these are anecdotes. On the macro level, the hood does not change.
Yeah. So, because, and Jared, I want to bring you in on this point, because the feeling is obviously that both of these parties, both of these parties represent wealth and elite values and corporations and so forth. And obviously, there are some differences. I don't think there's a lot of dispute. But and as you said, in some ways, obviously, that's not liberation. So if it's not liberation and it's only a tactic, why don't we use some different tactics or some different ways other than using these two parties or these two vehicles? And I bring that up, Jared, to you, because at some point, if Biden does win, facetiously, I brought this up a little bit, not even that facetiously, actually, that now Black liberals, right, who feel like they played a role will be dusting off those resumes. They're not going to be dusting off policy ideas or overt policy, but they're going to be dusting off the resumes. How hard, it feels like our community is captured by this certain Black elite, liberal elite, that teams us to the Democratic Party. What do you think, one, I mean, I'm going to give you a softball, why that is, but what do you think we got to do to break that away and to think about doing some different things?
So again, first, I just want to say very quickly that the exchange that my two co-panelists just had, I think, is indicative of part of the problem I was trying to point to earlier. I think both make very good points, but for me, the problem still remains that if it comes to larger issues, we cannot get them on the table. So I think we all have particular and anecdotal and personal experiences that we can point to. But if I want, when I talk about something, if I want political prisoners free, if I want AFRICOM ended, if I want a redistribution of the GDP and an end of military and policing and all that stuff, we need something else.
There's no difference, right?
There's no difference, and there's no pathway to that. All this talk of pathway to victory with the election, there's no pathway to victory through these two parties. So in this way, this is why, I like Diallo, at least in this election, voted for the Green Party, in part just to make an argument that we need to move in alternative directions. What I'd really like to see us doing is, and that's why I've been, calling myself a Malcolm X voter, is to say we need to organize around the vote the way Malcolm advocated it, particularly at the end of his life, which is to say we need independent Black parties, blocs, campaigns, candidates in our own sets of agenda items. Because to your point, if I understood Kamau, even if Biden wins, he will have won without, particularly from us, much less anybody else, with a platform, without an agenda.
He wouldn't even talk to Ice Cube. What's up with that?
I mean, again, so that's actually the point. I'm glad you said that, because that's actually one of the points I wanted to bring up just very quickly, is that
Diallo, I see you.
One of the reasons why all of these Black, there is always room for the handfuls of Black people to go in this direction, as Diallo pointed out, is in part because the Democratic Party doesn't ever do anything for real, doesn't ever do anything substantively, and keeps leaving this door open for people to go out and find other alternatives. So what I'm trying to say is, if we do a better job of organizing, when they start to float out, they won't go to the right wing, they won't go to the conservatives and other, they'll go to have a more radical electoral option to go to, because what I'd like to really see is that become a pathway to greater levels of heightened struggle, organization, and to the point that Malcolm was also making, that this electoral thing would be reduced in its focus in our lives to being just one of so many other tactics that we need to be engaged in. That's really what I'm, but very quickly, before this, the last couple of days, I looked this up. One of the major funders, to your point, Kamau, about why we can't get this conversation and, expanded, and the people going for the check after the, Biden's potential victory here, is that the nonprofit funding structure behind the scenes is so powerful. Mm-hmm. So I was looking it up, and Act Blue, one of the major Democratic Party funding nonprofits, was working with an operating budget of over $3.5 billion for this 2020 election season. That is a lot of money going out to people, particularly in commercial media, who want ad revenue. My late mentor, the late great Ron Walters, who admitted he was a reformist and not a revolutionary, to his credit. I mean, one of the last newspaper articles he wrote in 2008 was a condemnation of the Obama campaign for not giving the Black commercial press the money it was used to getting from these election cycles, because they were taking the Black vote for granted. Mm-hmm. And my point in bringing that up is that was an exposure or a reminder of this under sort of behind the scenes structure that puts all these pundits out. If you don't support the Democratic nominee or the Democratic Party, you don't get invited to a lot of commercial spaces. You don't get any money. You lose your political and social capital and financial capital to a certain extent, and then you get marginalized and have to, come hang out with us at Renegade Culture. So.
True. So when we come back, Diallo, I see you chomping at the bit. So when we come back, I'm gonna let you do your thing. We're gonna take our second break, come back for our third segment, Renegade Culture. Be right back.
Yeah. 2 years ago, a friend of mine asked me
to say some MC lines.
So I said this rhyme.
I'm about to say.
The rhyme was deaf, and then it went this way.
Bam!
Yeah,
also, I mean, we didn't do this really quick. Diallo Zakiya, you guys are new. My man Jared knows this by heart. So we got a little theme song real quick that we like to do with our guests. So I want y'all to join in. You know what I'm saying? It goes a little something like this. The R, the E, the N, the E, the G, the A, the D, the E. It's Renegade. Word up. Renegade culture. Word up. Boom. Zakiya, this is our laughter, Zakiya. I didn't see you really participate, so I'm not going to hold that against you.
I participated.
You did? Okay. So Diallo, I know you had some stuff that you was holding that you wanted to get out about some of the other commentary.
Yeah, I mean, I really resent this whole thing because it's forcing me to have to advocate for things I hate. And things
Are you coming off like the conservative, brother? You don't got to give me this conservative. You can break that.
I'm playing the Caucasus Mountain cave dwelling. But before I do that, I'm going to take advantage of my colorful language opportunity and say fuck Ice Cube, fuck his contract, and fuck him for getting my goddamn YouTube flag for when I did a line-by-line breakdown and analysis of his punk-ass plan. And if you want to hear go listen to Ice Cube's song "I Ain't the One," and where he talks about how women, females come to him and try to ask him for money and benefits, and how he manipulates them into thinking they're gonna get benefits and money from him, and he gets everything from them, and they get nothing from him. And he played same hole with Trump. But don't get me started. What I want to say, number one, it's not true that these large issues can't be put on the table with this with the major parties. I hate to say it, but it's true. There have been large-scale issues that have been advanced by both parties, and the only difference between the masses of the people being able to get their interests above and beyond through the party blockage and the elites, and not being able to, is the level of mobilization and cohesion amongst the masses. We have accomplished a lot of things on the ground. Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, the end of Vietnam War and the campaign 60s, of gunboat 70s. Diplomacy, the Great Society, Pell Grants, the U.S. withdrawal of direct open aggression against Cuba, apartheid. You don't know how much groundwork was done to get the U.S. to finally turn against South Africa, which when the U.S. finally started to withdraw support from South Africa, and even in the Congo, as much as the mess as the Congo was, Mobutu fell within a month of the U.S. withdrawing support and groundswell. So and not only that, when scumbag presidents get into office, if the people are organized enough, Nixon was the most progressive president we've had since FDR. Nixon gave us the EPA, Endangered Species Act, Social Security. He expanded Social Security to more people, disabled and survivors of death. Nixon did some of the most progressive policies, not because he was a good man, but because Nixon was afraid of the people. The fact that there's a gate and a fence and a wall around the White House is actually a sign that they are afraid of the people. When I go into the elite areas here in Chicago, everything is boarded up. And now the white communities look like war zones. And in these times, we can wrestle concessions. You're never going to get to vote for liberation, and you're never going to get a system to willingly commit suicide. So the ultimate revolution comes from us. But if we're talking strictly about politics and what is possible, the fact that you have major parties who wouldn't even acknowledge that such a thing as a single player or expansion, the fact that they have to discuss that, and every politician has to stand up, that Nancy Pelosi had to stand up last year and say, we are a capitalist party. We are not a socialist party. Mm-hmm. The fact that she had to shows that there's opportunities. And as Del Jones teaches us, revolution is a process, is not an event. And you never go from, no matter what revolution you study, you never go from absolute tyranny to liberation. There's always these cracks and breaks in the system, whether it's the monarchical system or capitalism. There's always these cracks and breaks, and then you keep piling on to that as you mobilize independent of the system.
Let me just jump in, and I'm gonna have the guests come in. But there's a break. And some of the stuff you're talking about are not breaks, right? There's obviously, no one is saying that there's not a range of change that happens in the country, but usually it's based on an evaluation by the elite of what they can get away with giving up in order to hold on to more power, right?
Yeah, this is an ongoing struggle.
So what I'm saying is, so at the same time, Nixon was doing that, right, he was actively destroying the Black Panther Party,
exactly.
right? He was
Yes,
actively
absolutely.
killing, right?
And
He was murdering and
Yes.
killing. Let me get it out, brother. He was actively destroying the more radical edge of movement because he understood, as Kennedy understood, as Johnson, even as FDR, others understood, there was a certain progressivism that could be done, but still allow the capture or the keeping of the resources and the money in the hands of the elite, and to give enough to keep people from not doing exactly what you may be saying is tearing down the wall.
Bum rushing the house,
Yeah.
right.
So before I let you respond, Diallo, I want to make sure the other guests get some time in. I'm gonna let Jared and then we can come back after Zakiya and you come back. Go ahead, Jared.
On the one hand, I think Diallo makes some good points, and I think it's important to at least start with where I think he ended on the importance of movements and people being out there in the streets and organized and creating as much problem as possible. I agree with that. Where I think I disagree is that behind some of the scenes of some of the examples that Diallo raised were a lot of things that were going on that obviously we don't have time to get into. But for instance, like when he talks about the pressure on South Africa, yeah, a lot of people were involved with anti-apartheid work and put a lot of pressure on South Africa that did have an impact. But there was a lot of stuff happening internally in the country with, for instance, the suppression of Chris Hani and the radical militants, the deal that Mandela ended up making that got rid of the socialist revolution and got put the arms. I mean, all this kind of stuff. Of course, then Chris Hani had to be assassinated. And then Desmond Tutu wrote in his own book the reason they did the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and making comparisons to post-World War II Nazi Germany. He said the difference between South Africa and the thing that happened with the Nazis in the Nuremberg trials was that he said, quote, "We didn't win." So he even acknowledged that South Africa is not a victory. This is sort of the part, there's a neo-colonial shift that happens in this also. Mm-hmm. Same thing in the Congo. We just had a conversation with Kambali Musevuli the other day. The Congo is jacked up. It's a mess. And part of the shift from Mobutu and all this other stuff and getting rid of Mobutu was, again, the neo-colonial shift to get rid of this overt, horrific person and replace it with a more subversive, corporate, commercial, neo-colonial operation that to this day is ravaging the people in that country and throughout the continent. So anyway, I'll end where I started with. The agreement I think we need to be much more organized, much more militant across an array of activities where electoral politics are just one version and one part of that. And that's the kind of work. It's not the more glorified external pressures that do work and do have impact that make the real change that we want to see. But it's the internal struggles that are often suppressed beneath and often more radical and militant that I think we need to engage in and revisit if we want to really make something happen. And then, by the way, just lastly, real quick, some of the things that Nixon did do. I mean, these are relatively, they may seem progressive, but only relative to the horrific nature of the state. I mean, Pell Grants and Social Security. I mean, these are some basic things that are not even bare minimums that we should already have as a basic standard for our engagement with the political system on any level. So anyway.
So Zakiya, I want to let you jump in. If you had something.
Ditto, shit, everything Jared just said. Seriously, I mean, the other thing that I feel like, because I've been having a lot of these conversations over the last couple of weeks, with the advent of everything being online and all these conversations. One of the things that I never hear that come up, like we love our Asadas of the world. We love our Sekou Odingas. We love our political prisoners, Mumia and all of them. But what I don't see is that same energy that these people had, even in like this Trump era. I actually thought, because in Ohio, I was looking at things on the ground in 2016. I was still living there then, and I predicted that Trump would win because the support is not just of white poor people. He certainly had a lot of white educated people and rich people who support him. And I was just like, wow, when he won, I'm like, oh man, ooh, we about to get it on. It's getting ready to be some radical organizing and all of this stuff. And then I started seeing how things were unfolding, and people were just like capitulating, like just, I was like, oh, okay, we're going back to business as usual. Oh, okay. And so I feel like, all of these grand things that we're talking about that we need, I don't feel like and I don't know I don't have like the answer fully, like what the psychological like issue is with why people are not literally tearing shit up and like doing what was happening, you know, that we saw in some other countries, like to just shut this government down, is that I feel like, and Jared alluded to this earlier, I feel like they have done a good job with selecting leadership in our community that I call the Black elite and the Black Miss Leadership class.
The blue check.
I feel like I feel like they've done a good job with that. And that $3 billion, brother, I see a lot of Black people who got some of that money. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like that's the tension, and we're not talking about that. Like, we have traitors in our in our community. And it's always been like that. When you think about what happened with, you know, Marcus Garvey, it was Negroes that wrote to J. Edgar Hoover to get him. I mean, come on, like, we still have this happening, you know, Booker T. Washington and W. So the Black Miss Leadership class has always been a buffer between revolution of the masses who want to organize. And then I would say, finally, the masses is also out here literally struggling, y'all. Like, I get choked up sometimes because before COVID, I traveled all around the country, and our economic conditions are in the toilet, and it's only going to get worse and we're not also talking about this technological revolution is getting ready to get rid of the jobs that we normally do. Working class, essential working people. We're not even, Biden didn't even talk about none of that. We're not talking about Elon Musk.
Biden didn't talk about shit, though. He didn't have a campaign. He's the weakest candidate ever.
This shit is getting bad, y'all, and it's going to get worse. And I'm really concerned about the level of conversation that even we're having. Like, we're not, like, forecasting what's happening, and it don't look good, y'all. It just don't.
So on that note, I want to thank you guys for coming on. This has been this has been the most intellectual show I think we've had in a long time.
Thank you.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, some of it's got to be like we're missing somebody, and so it feels like it's a little, you know, a little more poignant and good. First, I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to say, how can folks reach you, get in touch with you in terms of your social media? Jared, we start with you.
Again, I appreciate being on. imixwhatilike.org, at imixwhatilike for all your relevant social media. And I definitely want to invite myself back because to Zakiya's point, I'm just wrapping up with some colleagues a report on the state of Black businesses and the conditions that our people are facing. And it is horrific and going to get way worse. So I'd like to come back and talk much more about that when that report comes out very soon.
And people shouldn't forget the myth and propaganda of Black buying power. They should pick that up and
great
read
book,
about,
brother. Great book
fantastic.
Too.
Thank you very much.
Book.
And it's still free. People can get it still for free.
That's the best kind. That's the best kind of book, bro. Brother Diallo, tell us how folks can get in touch with you and find out more about your work.
DialloKenyatta.com or at Diallo Kenyatta across social media, Twitter, Facebook, blog, at Diallo Kenyatta.
Yeah, definitely appreciate you being on as well, brother. Zakiya, how do folks get in contact with you? I love the fire, the passion. How do folks get in contact with you?
Yes, sir. So on Twitter, Zakiya Shinyere, I think I sent it to you on email. And people can just put in Zakiya Sankara-Jabar on Facebook, and you can find me there as well.
Cool. Thank y'all. We're going to have all of y'all back. We know this discussion.
Man. Great show. Appreciate y'all.
We wanted to go deeper, but obviously as time allows, and we're going to have all y'all back to discuss this again. Right? Peace, y'all. Renegade Culture.
Peace.
We'll be back.
Peace. This is dope, y'all.
And don't forget, we got King Malachi coming back.
That's right.
Conversation, they're going to give us some bars and whatnot, so don't go nowhere. King Malachi, Boom. Renegade Culture.
Boom.
This DJ, he gets down.
Mixing records
while they go around with the hip. You just don't stop. You rock to the beat, to the record stop. Renegade Culture. You know it's hip hop history, man.
You know what I'm saying? I'm loving it because it's like it's the hip hop that when I first got into, heard hip hop. When hip hop was born, I'm like, I remember all them songs.
That's that early 70s rap right there, boy.
Late 70s.
Not no early 70s, man. Know your history, young. See, that's why you got to teach the youngins the history.
I know, youngin.
The first rap record didn't come out in 79. But come on now.
Oh, hey.
Come on now. Come on, DJ Air Doctor. Come on now.
You're going to be replaced.
Did you know that, John?
Come on now.
You know, I didn't really know that.
now.
That's why we're here. We study so we learn so we can teach.
True that, true.
you know what, man?
We
got a superstar in the house with us tonight, bro.
Superstar?
Superstar. Like one of my favorite. Now, you know me.
I know.
I'm highly critical of artists.
You are.
So if I like you, that's one thing. But if I love you, like I love this brother coming on, and you know he got to be all that. Let's give it up right now for King Malachi. No doubt, man.
Got a king in the house.
Got a king in the house for real.
I mean, you hear that baritone voice, he's like,
hey, man, listen.
God, Malachi.
Hey, listen, we were talking about, you know, he's like Jimmy Spicer, and my voice is baritone, and I really don't need no microphone. That's the king for real, because he really don't need a microphone. He's been tearing down stages all around the world.
Damn.
King Malachi, welcome, brother.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming over. It's good to have you.
Man, good to have you here for sure, man. So, I mean, give the people just a little background of who you are. We know you've done many different things, but tell them who is King Malachi?
You know, I grew up originally in Orangeburg, South Carolina. I was born in Stamford, Connecticut. I went to Orangeburg as an aunt baby. I've been doing music since a child. My mother was the lead singer of the church choir. Me and my brother used to sing background for my mother. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So you know, my first instrument was a accordion. Second grade, you know, fifth grade. I was the only kid in my school system who owned a tenor saxophone. And my first sax was a Vito. I had a tenor and an alto and a trumpet. Ninth grade, you know, before I got expelled, I won. I made it to solo ensemble. In the state of South Carolina, I made it with honors. That's what's up. So all praises due to the Most High, man. For real, the music is a gift for me.
So you're a musician, and we know that you've been in the game for a long time. We wanted to briefly touch on the fact that you did work with P. Diddy back in the day. Tell us a little.
That's back when he was Puff. He wasn't even P. Diddy.
He was Puff back then.
Word up.
Right. At that time, you know, he didn't even have an office yet for Bad Boy. You know, he was still taking meetings at Uptown. And so, you know, I was in a group at that time. I was a kid. And, you know, salute the 112 because I love them. Them boys bananas. But we did beat them for that deal.
Word up.
Salute the 112.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. But at that particular time, you know, we didn't take the deal, you know, because he wanted 50% of the publishing and the merchandising. And, you know, it's crazy, though, because after I did my own thing in the streets, musically, and selling my own product and everything and having minimal promotions and all that, I still could have took that situation, the hustler I am, I would have still been a multimillionaire. Period.
True indeed.
And at that time, they wasn't getting all the show money.
Right.
Oh,
True
man,
indeed.
I would have been going crazy.
Back then. Wasn't no 360 back
I would have
then.
been going crazy. Merchandising shows, he would get 50% cool. But at that time, I was splitting it with a group.
Yeah. But you know, one thing that I've always just admired about you is that you are so unique, man. It's like very rarely do we have that, you know, that masculine, you know, hip hop, soul kind of, you know, I can definitely hear the church influence. So as you became a solo artist and started developing your style, what were some of the influences that helped you become King Malachi?
Oh, man, well, what helped me become King Malachi is just, you know, studying the Bible with my teacher, Naka, at the time. So that was like, I've been Malachi since 2000. Like 98, right? But the music side, the musical influences, when I really took the rap part serious, like I'm gonna be a rapper, for real. You know, I wanted to come at Tupac head. I wanted to come at Biggie head. Like, and I was just starting. Like, they was the best. You know what I mean? And so I was like, you know,
that's how hip hop is, but that's hip hop.
Yeah. So you know, when I was on the R&B side of things in the group, you know, I remember times where I didn't like how my demos sound, and I would compare them to Jodeci. And I used to be in the studio with them when they was making Diary of a Madman. Right?
Wow.
And so you know, I would play their stuff and play my stuff, and I'd be like, nah. You know what I mean? And they gave me that benchmark. And it was just a blessing to actually see my favorite album from them being created. You know, at that time, nobody knew Timberland. Nobody knew Missy. She was just coming out of the group Sister at the time.
Sister, I remember
that was you know, and then, you know, it was being engineered by Prince Charles. And right now, he's at Berklee School of Music in Boston. You know, he's like a head guy over there. So it was interesting.
Yeah. So, you know, I know you have done some work with Dungeon Family, the legendary Dungeon Family. I was telling them not too long ago, there's a couple of songs that are in the vault that I tell people they can be released now, and them shits are still bang. Seriously, that new generation Dungeon Family, you know, that's my shit. Like, so tell us about how did you link up with Dungeon Family?
All right, well, in '97, I was moving from New York with my group, and we from South Carolina. We went up there to get a deal.
Yeah.
And so we got a deal with Steven Spielberg and Eric Sermon from Death Squad, right? And so that's how we was on 205th. We was on 125th Street.
Right.
And we chose straws to stay either in New York or come down to Atlanta because one or two of us had kids in South Carolina where we're from. So Atlanta won, right? It was destiny. I'm glad it won. I'm glad it won. And so check, this is real life. I was on 2/5, and I was looking up at this big billboard, and it had Rico Wade in the middle with his dungeon tattoos like this. It had D-Dot and Angeletti from Bad Boy, from, you know, the Hitman.
Yeah, the Hitman.
Puffy,
The Hitman.
producers who produced all that.
All that shit. Yeah,
that,
man. The Hitman. Like I said, yeah.
Right? So I was looking up at the post, and this is when Goody Mob had Black Ice out, and I played that to death. And so that's when Organized was like at a high space right there.
doubt.
Right? And so I was looking up at the billboard. I was like, man, if we could only meet Rico Wade. So check this out. So we moved to Atlanta, and we moved to Oak and Holderness on the west side, and like right there where that situation happened with Jamil, with the Imam over there, with Imam Jamil, right? H-Rap Brown. When that happened, that was a block over for me, right? So I was there when all that happened, and it was weird. Like I was in Atlanta for 2 weeks, and on a Monday, me and my partner, who was managing the group at the time, we went to Lenox early that morning, like just on some, man, let's go to Lenox. You know, we know in the city.
Right.
Typically,
right.
go to Lenox.
Go to Lenox.
And we was bored,
hang out, see somebody.
It's on Monday, it's slow. It seemed like literally, like nobody was in the mall but us and somehow Rico Wade.
Wow.
And his homeboy Ramon.
Wow.
Nah. He lived down the street from me.
Crazy.
Nah.
So did y'all just approach dude?
Listen, bro, ran up on Rico. He had a deal. It had Future in a group called The Connect.
Yeah.
They had a deal with the same label, DreamWorks.
Wow.
So he already
Spielberg and all
so
that, yeah.
that afternoon,
Wow, man.
we was in the studio with Rico.
Yeah. So we got a little special part of the show where we ask the artist to pick a question out the bowl. There's a bunch of questions in there. Okay. You're gonna read it and we're gonna answer the question. But before you do that, I guess we want to know where can people pick up your music? Right
now, the music is everywhere online. Definitely on YouTube, Spotify, Deezer, Amazon Music, everywhere. Tidal, all of that. You know what I'm saying?
Cool.
And also make sure y'all check out some of his other projects. You got mad content out there. Quality music out there, y'all. If you want to hear some quality music, check out King Malachi.
So get around there. There's a whole bunch of questions in there. Dig deep. Dig deep. Don't get that. Yeah, get yeah. Oh yeah, make him. I like that, brother. Make it look good. All right. What you got?
Who is the best singer rapper?
Okay, now hold up. Is going to answer now? We break it. We're going to go.
No, you got to answer now.
Okay, the best singer rapper. King Malachi, I would say. Go ahead, though.
No.
Come on now.
If I had to say the best singer rap of all time,
yeah,
Lauryn Hill.
Woo!
Well, conversation done.
Nobody can disagree with that.
I was like,
nobody can disagree with that.
All right, let me think. Nope, you're right. Yeah.
Even though to me, Lauryn is such a dope MC. I think people underestimate the kind of dope MC she is because she sings so beautifully. But she's a fire MC.
I'm gonna tell you something about that. When Lauryn album dropped, The Miseducation, she was such an ill MC that I heard so much singing. At first, I almost missed that it was a classic.
Yeah.
I almost missed what she was doing. But when I sat with her, I'm like, whoa.
Man, and if you hear her on Wyclef's The Carnival, She showed out on that, even more than Wyclef. Yeah. So we going to come back with a performance from King Malachi so y'all can really kind of feel the energy and see what it is. Renegade culture.
Boom, we be out.
You know what I mean?
Shalom, shalom. Definitely check me, King Malachi, on YouTube. Subscribe to that ASA and the King Malachi at IG. Ba, 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 yeah, ba, 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 yeah, ba, ba, yeah. Woo, ba, yeah. Woo, ba, yeah. Yeah, bum, bum, bum. Listen, on the boulevard downtown I rest, where the boy grow dread, white teeth stay fresh. Shut down, Grady on Paradise had the men. My 4JJ gave me 3 for the 10. Plus the kush smell nice. Round my way downstairs, gotta say, in my life, you know I had myself beats. Smoking hard round here. Woo! Don't slip up, they check your cars round here. Police. Hey, 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 living in the hey, where we stay, where we stay, where we lay. Woo! Living in the hey, yeah, where we stay, where we stay, yeah. In the store, playing numbers in the hood every day. On the block, somebody wants some change every day. Project, tumble down, condo building up. While we off in the club, get so turned up. Holy dope on the tongue, gotta keep a lookout. Cause it ain't no telling when the boy jump out. Off in your house, thing to your mouth, black mask with the tape like that in the air. Hey, hey, woo! Living in the hey, where we stay, where we stay, where we lay. Woo! Living in the hey, yeah, where we stay, yeah. It's still South Carolina till the day that I rest. I had to say it so you don't have to guess. In Atlanta, GA, I'll be all out in the street, learning the city so my family can eat. Y'all gotta feel it, get the CD pumping, pumping, the club jumping, jumping, y'all soon love it, the hood love it, yeah. You know that Irwin Street, Malachi in the Atlanta music industry, singing, hey, 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 hey. Hey, living in the hey, where we stay, where we lay.